The previous government had also made attempts to try and take the skills agenda forward. The bigger problem or the bigger challenge is that while India may be one of the fastest growing or is the fastest growing economy, growing at about 7.5%, we're still not being able to generate the kind of jobs that we need to. And even when we were growing at 8.5% under the UPA, even then we could not keep pace with the kind of jobs that we needed to. So Mr. Parrikar, let me start by asking you, your sector at this point in time is being held up as the sector of great hope. It is being held up as what could be the next big opportunity, specifically on the manufacturing side for India. But this is going to be a sector that will require high-skilled jobs. And since we're talking about high value and high-skilled, what is it specifically that, for instance, your ministry is doing in partnership with the Skills Mission to try and ensure that we actually have the right kind of people in place?
Before I answer you, I'd like just to add to what you said. It's a dilemma. Whether the employment is available, I don't think employment is that big problem. It's actually employable population that is a big problem. If people are skilled and know how to do certain things, entrepreneurial skill or any kind of other skills, in older generation, this is to be passed on from father to son.
Right.
During last maybe about 30-40 years, the son chooses his field, doesn't necessarily follow what father does. Obviously, those traditional skills have almost died down. Today you face a problem of a good carpenter also. I'm not saying carpentry is a highly paid job, but the deficit exists. A lot of people, if they have a skill, probably they could get employment in this sector. In building industry, for example, you don't get well-trained people. As far as defense is concerned, I think the skill requirement is at the upper end of the scale. Take example, for example, the aviation or the aerospace, where we can have a lot of employment generation, and which I foresee in next maybe couple of years, we should have 2-3 of jet fighter units either operational or about to be operational. Like for example, even the HAL, which has we have successfully developed Tejas, they have been already given the intent for 120 Tejas, and we are in the process of giving them approval for doubling the production line. That is about 16 aircraft per year. We'll have a shortage of skilled manpower. 2 more lines in the similar phase and 3-4 helicopter units itself will have a potential of absorbing 50,000 highly skilled jobs. I don't think even just creation of jobs itself will not be enough. So, and in fact, before you actually create job, you should plan your requirement in advance and start skilling up. We have started that.
So what is the process of being able to develop that pipeline of skilled people? Because as you were pointing out, it's the aerospace business or the aviation sector will require a significantly large number of people. And how much of the onus is going to be put on the private players, whether it's domestic or foreign, who come into India to use India as a manufacturing hub to actually partner with the government, and this becomes obligatory on them in some form or fashion?
They don't have to partner with government. For example, the offset regulations can be tweaked in such a way that skilling can be taken as a part. Training a highly skilled job in the aircraft industry can cost anywhere between 2 lakh per person to 7-8 lakhs, depending on the type of job he does. So if you allow, of course, subject to proper scrutiny and this, skilling as a part of offset obligations.
So has this necessary tweak already been made a part of the offset policy? That the new offset policy has already been put out?
The existing offset policy has been corrected to take care of the pending issues. The new offset initiative, I will call them initiative, which we are thinking does include one of the concept as training, skill development, and specialized creation of special knowledge.
Ramesh Wadhwani, let me ask you, and you put out an editorial a few days ago, and the number one item on that editorial, it's a blueprint as far as creating jobs in the country, and the number one item on that agenda was an advisor on jobs that should be posted in the Prime Minister's office. We have a skills development ministry. Why do you want an advisor in the Prime Minister's office to look after the job plan?
The problem is because no one is comprehensively addressing the disconnect between jobs growth and economic growth. So as Ajay mentioned a few minutes ago, in a recent 7-year period, GDP growth was 56%, job growth was 3%. In a typical annual plan, looking forward, let's say the next annual plan, GDP growth planning might be 7 or 8%, job growth planning is non-existent. So my point was, in the meeting with the Prime Minister was, would it not be reasonable to have a plan that says, in addition to GDP growth of 7 to 8%, job growth would be, let's say, 5 to 6%, because there will always be some sectors like the finance sector where financial services firms are less jobs intensive than manufacturing firms. And if you in fact set that kind of goal, who should set the goal? What's the economic basis for determining that goal? Once the goal is set, what are the underlying initiatives, some of which might be in the Ministry of Skills Development, some of which might be in a whole bunch of other ministries, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Roadways, all of them have job creating opportunities and initiatives. And when you put it all together, if there is no ability to coordinate and sort of connect the dots between what the different ministries are doing, what the PSUs are doing, what private sector is doing, and some kind of plan, you will never achieve the plan. So the jobs advisor would have 3 responsibilities. The first is creating overall master plan for jobs growth, pretty much the way that Niti Aayog creates a economic development plan. The second would be to actually identify specific initiatives, regardless of which ministries or PSUs they're in, which more or less add up to that kind of plan. So at least there's some way to connect the dots. And then the third, and perhaps most important, is to really coordinate what's happening between the cabinet ministries and the state governments, because so much of the job creation will happen in the states. So just this whole process of integrating across so many different planning units, so many different decision-making units, so many different initiatives. Of course, it's the Prime Minister's call, but...
so did he say that this sounds like a good plan or not?
He, without trying in any way to preempt what the Prime Minister thinks, I would say signals were encouraging.
Signals were encouraging. Mr. Parrikar, you know, you're probably much more adept at picking up the signals that come in from the Prime Minister's office than any of us here in this room. But let me ask you, sir, and this is an important point that Mr. Wadhwani here is making, that while each individual ministry will outline what their outcomes should be and so on and so forth, the emphasis so far has been on skills and the skills mission as far as the government is concerned. But should we not look at it more comprehensively and also look at a jobs plan which hasn't really been put together at this point in time, nor has it been articulated? We have a vague number in terms of what we would like to achieve, but we actually haven't seen a plan being put together.
Articulation may be lacking, but we have a plan.
Okay.
Now, job advisor is a different issue altogether. Basically, anything to happen, there are 2 aspects of it. One is vision. And I think we didn't have a Prime Minister with such fantastic vision. He has thought of even the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan can create jobs. One, for those who collect garbage, segregate them, for those who treat it, that is one. But the more important part, if you have a clean and Swachh Bharat, as he has in mind, you improve on health services, your health condition improve. Medical tourism for foreigners, India can be much more attractive place to come, because the worry is always post-operation care in India.
But we need civic bodies who actually pay salaries, sir.
I'll put it more clearly. One of the reason probably the Swachh Bharat from civic bodies does not take off is garbage has lot of money in it. And it is one area where controller auditor probably doesn't want to go because it stinks. But it actually stinks both ways. The maximum corruption you will find in garbage.
Okay, all right. So the Swachh Bharat could also be an interesting employment generator. But Mr. Wadhwani, at this point in time, with the challenges, with the advent of technology, with the challenges of automation in the workplace, even Make in India were to be a grand success, we still would not be able to create the kind of numbers that we need to create even within the manufacturing space. What are the challenges that can be sort of overcome there, and especially when we're talking about high-skilled jobs, the challenges of automation and the challenges of the advent of technology in the manufacturing space specifically?
So, it's an incredibly complex issue, and because it's a very complex issue, it also has very complex answers. But if I was to oversimplify it a little bit, we have to segment the problem into a number of parts and then address each of them separately. And as Minister Parrikar just said, the Prime Minister does have an extraordinary vision. He's established several initiatives that are job creating. Swachh Bharat was one example that Minister Parrikar talked about, but Make in India is all about job creation. Startup India is about job creation. Skill India is about job creation. But they create jobs in different ways, at different levels of skilling capability. So if you start with the notion that we have to create 50 million incremental jobs
That's
over
right.
and above the current job creation rate over the next 10 years, you start with sources of job creation and then you look at sources of job fulfillment, because Minister Parrikar is correct that even if there was a job open, but you didn't have a skilled person to fill it, what's the point, right?
Mr. Parrikar, I know that you actually have deep knowledge of being able to operate within the SME space, and you did that in your earlier avatar as well. So, you understand the pain points. And this is a common view that, as Mr. Wadhwani was pointing out, that perhaps in India, we now incentivize people to want to stay small, to be able to avail of the kind of benefits that we've just talked about. What do you actually do? How do you create that roadmap to unshackle the small and medium sector, which really in that sense, is the backbone as far as the economy is concerned for many reasons?
I think in India, we have created a psychological barrier for wealth creation. Wealth creation does not mean you loot the exchequer. But if a person with his intelligence, with his hard work, can generate wealth, he creates employment for many. But when we see towards a person with a wealth or a wealth creation, we almost see him as a sinner. I think that mindset of thinking should basically change. Once that changes, I think a lot of things will happen. As far as the smallness is concerned, the small category incentives are necessarily to make him come out of that initial problem. As a small entrepreneur myself, I'll tell you the biggest harassment an industrialist or a startup can have is harassment by government officers. I have faced this myself. I must have faced 5-6 prosecutions. There is a ESI fellow, there will be Provident fellow who is just looking out for you to make a small mistake. I feel for myself that all startup should be exempted from all this kind of filing returns and inspections for first 5 years period. Our departments love to make things complicated. I was recently reading a report in the paper where there was a scam caught, if you remember, Bank of Baroda.
Yes.
For they didn't import anything, but the foreign currency was. Now we in India tend to work out a mechanism by which instead of punishing the guilty, they will go scot-free ultimately. I can bet on it. Our legal system is so questionable in its overall approach that ultimately people who have done that fraud will go scot-free.
Are you really saying our legal system is questionable, Mr. Parrikar?
I'm saying our legal system is so complicated.
You said questionable, sir.
Questionable in its requirement for proofs and time delays. See, I'm being very clear about it. The system allows you to drag on for years if you have enough money and a good advocate. You can go on delaying issues and you can fight your battle from the lowest court to the highest court,
right.
thereby virtually taking a span of 50 years. So how do you get justice? Person who has done that fraud should have been punished quickly. Had he been done, if you do this, and this I'm not speaking as a minister, this is a problem I'm speaking
As a former entrepreneur.
commoner, entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You face problem for that, what will the department do? I bet, I'm very sure, they will put some regulation in addition to the normal regulation
Yeah.
which are existing, and thereby so-called tightening the system. The result is a person who is honest and does not go for fraud, he suffers.
Okay.
Person who does the fraud doesn't suffer.
It's nice to hear you say these things, Mr. Parrikar, but why didn't you prevail on your own colleagues when they put out the Startup India mission? Because you're talking about letting startups not have to comply with any of these rules and regulations for 5 years, but that's not what the Startup mission says.
I threw a ball in your court because I wanted you to come up with that. I think that is what this government is trying to work for.
I can make my plug here, but Mr. Wadhwani, coming back to the point that Mr. Parrikar was making, and there are limitations even as far as the kind of jobs that startups can create in this country, but let's not dismiss the fact that that is a great avenue for growth and enterprise. You've probably had a look at the startup policy that the government has recently unveiled. Your thoughts on that?
I think you've characterized it well. I think the intent is in the right place. The intent is strong. But I suspect that in the process of making policy, it's like making a sausage. It's quite messy. And the taste doesn't always come out the way you like it. I think in this particular case, a lot of good things in the policy. If I had to pick on 2 or 3 things that should go further, the first is deregulation, exactly what Minister Parrikar was talking about. I think that is one of the biggest problems that small companies and particularly startups face. I think the second is support for local ecosystems of mentors and angel investors who can help entrepreneurs succeed. There needs to be a focused effort on that as part of Startup India. I think in terms of the tax incentives that have been provided, 3 years is meaningless. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur, I've done so many startup companies. In 3 years, you're just figuring out your business model, your product, your customer, and you don't actually get to meaningful revenue till the year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So one of the things we have to do is if we're going to give incentives, they have to be meaningful incentives that, to me, says 7 to 10 years. There is some tuning needed. Hopefully, that tuning will be possible in the months to come.
All right. Unfortunately, we've extended our time here, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I think the consensus on the panel here is that the need of the hour at this point in time is to start the process of really identifying the areas that could be potential multipliers, growth multipliers. So the need of the hour is to start with identification. The need of the hour is also amplification. So sectors which you've already identified to really amp up the kind of opportunities that exist and really milk those opportunities that exist. And at the end of it, I think the third one would be to identify new areas of growth creation in that sense. You talked about the new growth drivers, Mr. Wadhwani, and perhaps that could be the focus of the jobs plan that the government intends to put together, as Mr. Parrikar tells us, or will put together.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done, but we're hoping that you will make a start there, sir. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts here. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here this evening.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.